Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Megan Edge. She is a master healer, intuitive educator, counselor, and the author of Heart's Journey, The Heart's Journey, Healing Hearts, Oracle Cards, and Guidebook. So this is my brief introduction to Megan, but my main question, the question that I love asking everyone, how would you introduce yourself, Megan? Who are you in your own words?
In my own words, I am a mother, I am a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter. Um, and I have a dog. I'm a dog owner. And I want to start with that as like how I identify myself, because those are the most important aspects of myself when I walk through the world. That I get to be a mother to these beautiful daughters that I've raised. And brought into the world. They chose me and I chose them. And that I get to be a partner, a wife to my husband who supports me in so many wonderful ways. After that, after all of that, then I am a healer. And that's my other main identifier. I've always done that work. I've always been a healer in one way or another. And then after being a healer, I'm a teacher. So I love to share what I've learned and what I know and what works for me and what works for other people. And to be able to educate somebody about what's possible for them in healing, in their life, in their direction, in their purpose, and whatever it is that they are interested in. And I could list a whole bunch of ways I am a healer, but I think we're going to get into that in the conversation. Um, so yeah, that's how I would introduce myself.
That's beautiful, though. What's not to love about that? Family, and that has very much, it feels to me with connection, isn't it? Feeling connected to other human beings throughout the human experience, which it can
Mhm.
be quite challenging for some of us without that deeper connection.
Yes,
Do you
yes.
feel the same way, Megan, that we all need human connection at that level?
We do. We do. And I know that it isn't always easy. I often say that being human is not for the faint of heart. There's lots of challenges that we experience as a human, and one of those that we experience is a sense of isolation, whether we're in the busiest, crowdest room or, downtown street, uh, or party or whatever. There's a disconnect that a lot of people experience, and so there's that illusion of being alone. But the reality is, in order to come into this world, we have to have connection with family, otherwise we wouldn't be born, basically. Right? It's fundamental. And I think one of the challenges for the human experience is to be in a healthy relationship with family and friends.
And while we are here within the topic of relationships, connection, from your experience, um, what is, let's say, the confirmation of that? How do we know when we are having these beautiful, healthy relationships, and what leads to that as well?
Oh, wow, what a beautiful question. How do we know? I think we know, or I feel that we know when we have that beautiful, healthy connection, because there is an ease in our interactions with one another. There isn't angst or disconnect or discord. And that isn't to say that you can't have an argument with somebody that you're beautifully close to. Of course, you can have a disagreement, a differing of opinions. That's healthy to have. When you're in an unhealthy relationship, when you're in a constant state of flight or fight, or you're constantly questioning their loyalty to you or their love of you, or your safety. I mean, in very real circumstances, of course, there's the safety issue. You can know right away if you're not in a safe relationship. But at a more fundamental and a more subtle level, I believe that it is that feeling of ease. That's how you know that you're in a healthy relationship with somebody.
How do we get there? Is that
Mm.
both people doing the work, or yeah, I would love to know how that came to be for you.
Yes. So how we get there is, in part, it is our work. It's the work that we do. If we know that we are in an unhealthy relationship and we wish that relationship to be a healthy one, then there is work that needs to be done between the two individuals or the people who are involved in that relationship. But fundamentally, that work has to start with the self. So if I wish to be in healthy relationships, then I need to be healthy. I need to have a healthy mindset. I need to have healthy beliefs about myself and my purpose in life. And I have to have a love of myself before anyone else is going to be able to love me. It's in my experience an impossibility to love or to allow love in, to be loved by someone if you do not love yourself. And some people are born loving themselves, and that's a beautiful thing. But for most human beings, there's a lot of stuff that happens to us, experiences and events in our lives that could cause us to question our own worth and our own value and our own love of ourselves. And so then that's where the work is as we become an adult, is to discover that love for ourselves first, and then step into the world with that love for self in order to draw healthy love from outside to ourselves.
Is that part of the healing work you do with people that you work with? Is that basically a lot of the work to be done around self-love? Or
It is. It's a primary conversation. And what I'm able to do when I sit down with a client or a student or a friend is to listen to the way in which they speak about themselves and their experiences, to understand what the underlying and probably unconscious beliefs are that they have about themselves and their value in the world and the value to others, and what they feel about themselves. It's in the words that they use, that are mostly they're unconscious of the use of those words. And then my role is to point out gently and with love how they are in this constant relationship of self-deprecation with themselves through their story, and then helping them to replace those low vibration, unconscious words with something that is a higher vibration, something that is a more wholesome, a more aware, a more integrated view of themselves and of the way in which they're telling their story. And that skill, to teach them that skill, to recognize the power of their words, is the cornerstone of the healing work that I do with people.
so what happens when somebody it's not actually, even when they're pointed to, like a lot of times I try in a gentle way, but they are
Hmm.
not really willing to take the suggestion or go deeper to investigate, why, where those words are coming from. So would you say that's because they're not ready for healing?
Well, we're all on our own journeys, and it's not my role to heal somebody, and it's not my role to educate somebody. Like, I'm not their educator, but what I can do is be a mentor, and I can demonstrate through the way that I live my life and the language that I use and the way that I show up in the world a different perspective that they could choose to adopt or not, right? The only person that I can heal is myself. But what happens when I do my healing for myself, and this is the same for any of us, there's a ripple effect that happens energetically, and the people around us are impacted by that ripple. And they may not understand what's happening, but they are being influenced by it, and they can either, again, consciously or unconsciously, choose to embrace what they're seeing as someone else's health and wellness, or they can choose not to. So, I mean, one of the things that when I first started to understand the importance of my language, and I started to bring my vocabulary to a higher vibration, I started to notice how many people around me were speaking in very negative ways, and I had been a part of that. And when I stepped out of that and started to use high vibration words and positive speaking, uh, other people around me would start to adopt that as well without them consciously being aware of it, right? That was their unconscious choice, was to reflect back the language that I was using without my having to say to them, hey, you're talking really poorly about yourself right now, or take should out of your vocabulary. You shouldn't be saying should, that sort of thing. And then what I also noticed is that I started to drift away from the people around me who were not able to see that there was a new language being spoken. Those relationships started to drift away, partly because wasn't, I was no longer participating in that negative view and that negative language. And so I wasn't a partner in misery anymore, right? Misery loves company. Any time that we do anything for ourselves that is healthy, let's say somebody has an addiction, um, when they step away from that addiction, they also step away from the people who with whom they shared that addiction. They can't be in relationship anymore, and it happens on every level. When we change something about ourselves, or we evolve, or we grow, we no longer are vibrating at the same frequency as the people we may have surrounded ourselves with, who also upheld that where we were then. And so when that happens, it can be very painful, but also we open up space in our lives for new interactions, new relationships to come in that are now vibrating at that same frequency again.
Discussing in a moment is the body as a spiritual journey. So what comes to mind is from my own journey of not accepting myself in the past because of traumas that I went through and all that. The fear was the main. It was the foundation of all those, the negativity, the suffering, unnecessary suffering, I usually say. So fear, I was afraid of so many things. Now I still see the movements of that fear still here. So in the body especially, and I can't really change it because the body has been scarred by those by traumatic experiences in the past, in childhood and throughout life too. So how do we learn to integrate in ways that possible?
Yes, and that's the same for everyone. Our bodies have memories. Our cells have memories, and we have muscle memory. So, and we have emotional memory. So we learn as we're growing up certain things about our environment and about our world, and our families and our expectations and love and all of that. And we see what we see as we're growing up, and our body will hold on to certain traumas and experiences, or also joyful feelings, right? The body holds on to joy as well. The body can have joyful memory as well as traumatic memory. The work that I do is to help my clients change their relationship with the experiences that they've had in their lives. And that goes back to how they speak about it, but it also goes back to how they hold it in their body, how their body is communicating to them, right? So look at the fear for a moment. Sometimes we don't know that we're afraid until an event occurs that brings up the fear, and then we're fearful of whatever it is that's happened. Fear it's a very important emotional response, because what it does is it teaches us what is safe and what isn't safe. And if we've been through traumatic experiences, especially in our childhood, we learn at a cellular level that the world isn't safe. It's not safe for us, right? And then we take that into adulthood. And it's in adulthood that we have the opportunity to change our relationship with those early experiences, or even an experience that's happened to us, as we are an adult. We don't change the experience. The experience is still there. It's part of our story. You talk about this, the scarring. The scarring is and some people will disagree with this, and that's fine, but the scarring is it's a beautiful memento. Yeah, it's a beautiful memento. Is that the right word I'm thinking of? Yeah. It's a beautiful thing of the story, of the scar, right? The scar reminds us, right, I had this thing that happened to me. But the scar isn't the story, and you are not your stories. They are a part of who you are, but they are not what you are. So people often ask me, how do I know if I've healed? Like, how do I know that I'm better now from this event, whatever the event was? And it's when you are no longer triggered into those emotional responses that you had at the time of the event in the present moment. Right? So PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I'm not sure if we're calling it that anymore, but that's what I grew up with in all my trainings, is PTSD. PTSD is only a chronic condition if the emotional response to the original trauma has not been healed. It hasn't had an opportunity to heal. But PTSD can be healed. And when you are able to speak of your experiences and be able to do so from a place of, this is something that happened to me, but I'm okay, right? I'm not shaking with fear. I'm not remembering that event and feeling it still in my body. That's when you know that there has been healing. And that's when you can then speak about that experience and you can share that story with others in a healing way, right? In a way that says, you can do this too.
That, in a way, summarizes exactly what I'm doing, like this work that I've been doing for 5 years now with this podcast and everything else, the agency, the marketing agency. So that has everything to do with exactly what you said, and you can do it too, right? Although I
Yeah.
still have some, not the triggers, but I would say the memory, because that, it
Mm-hmm.
seems like you said, we cannot really remove get rid of memory. That's something that will always will be there, but it doesn't have the same impact anymore.
Well, that's right. And when you are able to give your life experiences purpose and meaning, then they have a value to you that they wouldn't otherwise have had, right? And when a new experience happens that could be traumatic, you have a whole different mindset around how to navigate that experience because you've done the work. So it's not to say that somebody who's done a lot of healing work is going to walk through life unscathed, moving forward. There's still going to be loss, there's still going to be grief, there's still going to be traumatic experiences, but they have a different way of being in them, right? So for example, and I'll talk of my own experience. The last 5 years, we went through the whole world went through an enormous meltdown. Personally, we went through a number of very significant losses of family members, and then of a very dear property, the family cottage that we loved and thought would be with us forever. And when that final loss, when when the property was sold and we were no longer there, all of those other losses that had been accumulating over the 4 or 5 years came rushing in. And I recognized in myself the depth of the grief that I was experiencing. And I knew that I needed to allow myself the time to feel that depth of grief, knowing that there would be a time, there would be a day, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, where I would wake up one morning and remember, but no longer be remorseful of it. I mean, with that knowing, that there comes peace, because I could then let myself cry and rage and grief and do all the things that I needed to do, take myself off social media, get away from everybody, do whatever I needed to do my healing. And now I can sit in it, and I can remember the people that we lost, and I can remember the beautiful property that we had and all my childhood memories of growing up there and all of that. I can remember it, and I can love that I had all of that. And I can still even cry about it if I move to do so, but without it being so debilitating that I can no longer show up in the world. And so when people talk about riding the waves of grief, that's really a good analogy for what happens to us. And then we're also riding the waves of healing at the same time that we're allowing ourselves to have those experiences and let them be meaningful. And now if somebody comes to me and says, I'm absolutely devastated because I've lost my favorite home, I I can sit with that with them. I can understand that that is the same as losing a loved one when it's a place that is so important to you in a deeper way than I could have otherwise. I could have been very empathetic for them, and I could imagine what that would be like, but I wouldn't know what it was like. Right. And so that shared experience that we were talking about, the sharing of stories, seeing the value in your experiences, because with that experience, you can then be there for someone else as they go through it, becomes really important.
But there's something really beautiful about feeling the feelings, not detaching, not trying to escape from feelings, trying to push them away or judging them. There's beauty in it, I have to say. It's another color of life, isn't it?
That's a really lovely way of looking at it. It's another color of life. It's another way to move through your experiences. And excuse me, it's not always pretty. Right? You can you can be in a state of grace and still be really, really upset about something or be angry about it and feel despondent and all of those things. You can have all of that and also be in a state of grace and invite ease into that expression of the pain. Suffering is such an interesting concept. There's for a lot of people there's a deeply religious component to suffering. And this idea that, I mean, for example, in Christianity, Christ suffered on the cross for our sins. And I don't mean to be disrespectful of anyone who believes that. I also find that to be a toxic way of thanking somebody for doing something for you. You know what I mean?
I didn't think
Um,
it that way, but it's true. Yeah.
yes.
Huh.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, suffering. I feel that if when we take responsibility for ourselves, then we step out of suffering. I think we only suffer when we believe that other people are doing things to us over which we have no control. And so we victimize ourselves in suffering, as opposed to the alternative, which is, I am in pain. This is my experience. I will move through this and I will understand my participation in it as part of the awareness and the awakening and the healing process.
I interviewed somebody very interesting recently. Oh, I forgot his name. I cannot forget his name, but I did. Oh, Larry Bilota. Yeah, his name. He used to. He was married to somebody who was the concept of narcissism. She was
Mm,
really a narcissistic person, and then it would constitute abuse if you really kind of, from his perspective, if he chose to see it that way, but he didn't.
mhm,
So he kind of went through life married to this woman who would do like horrible things to him. Um, but he never really saw it that way. He said, I accepted that as my responsibility to the emotional abuse. That was not her responsibility, it was my responsibility. I mean, I think it was the first time that I ever heard that from somebody, because I interview a lot of people that specialize in narcissism abuse, and it's quite the opposite what they say, that we should
mhm.
kind of move away, run from people who are trying to abuse us emotionally. But this man, he just clearly said, no, it was my responsibility to heal myself in that relationship.
Yes. And it takes two people to create a relationship. Um, I also was in a very long relationship with somebody who could be described as narcissistic. And part of my awakening to understanding how I had allowed that to happen was to understand how I participated in it, to be able to really look deeply and hard at what why I had allowed that. What was the benefit to me of maintaining a relationship which upon greater reflection was not a healthy relationship, that it was quite toxic. But what was the benefit to me? That's a hard question to hear. It's a hard question to ask, right? And to answer as well. And I use the word hard, particularly when we were talking about the power of words before. Hard is the kind of word that once you say it, it's a dead stop. Something is hard. So that's it. It's hard. You don't go anywhere with that. Something is challenging. You rise to the challenge. So part of my healing process of that relationship was to challenge myself to be absolutely brutally honest with myself about what the benefit was to me to allow myself to be treated in a certain way. And once my blinders came off to how I was being treated, because quite often we don't realize, we don't know that we're being mistreated. If it's something that has become so habitual and so comfortable, until something shakes us up enough to realize it and start questioning how this has happened, we can stay in that relationship for a long, long time, right? But then to ask the question, what is the benefit to me of being in this relationship? And what I understood from my own experience is that the benefit to me was that I felt needed by the neediness of the narcissist. And I recognize that in that particular kind of dynamic between somebody who is a narcissist and somebody who isn't, the narcissist is very, very good and very strategic about how they maintain their connection with the other person. And I recognize that that wasn't something that I could change on for them, but what I could do was to change me. And once I started to change me, I was no longer as attractive to him. Right? So listen to that really carefully. That's really important, a really important point in a relationship. If you don't want to be in that relationship, you can't change the other person, right? You can't, you can try. Good luck. However, you can change yourself. And what will happen, like what we were talking about earlier with somebody who has addictions and then they move away from the addiction, the people who had been a part of that dynamic of addiction are no longer going to want to be with you when you are no longer, helping with their addiction by being addicted yourself. So the same thing happens in relationship. You become, you evolve, and if the other person isn't willing to evolve with you or do their work, naturally that relationship is going to fall away, which is kind of perfect when it's meant to, right? When the relationship has done all that it's meant to do for two people, then there is a natural separation that occurs. And in our culture, we hang on very tightly for a variety of reasons. And then it can get really painful and really ugly, but it doesn't have to be like that. If, well, it's a whole probably other evolution of the human species. We're not quite there yet because we do love drama. We love a good drama.
I love that question. What's the benefit?
Right. Because it takes two people to tango. Right. This is what I was saying at the end of my first marriage, as that marriage was falling apart. Rather than blaming each other for where we had gotten to, I wanted to understand how we had gotten to the place that we found ourselves in. Right. It wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about, for me, it was about understanding how we had found ourselves in the place that we were in at that point. And sometimes a relationship is meant to be done. You've learned everything you can from one another. You're ready to move on to different pastures, whatever it is. And then sometimes it's the relationship is to survive or to move in a new direction together, right? But either way, there's a naturalness to it if we can allow that to happen.
When it dissolves, the relationship naturally dissolves. Is
Mm-hmm.
that something that in your case, that your ex-husband, did he understand that? Was he in agreement that of his own part? Did he take responsibility for his own part of it, of the dissolution of the relationship?
No, no, no. It did not. And he was very astute, though. There was at one point before my blinders came off, but they were starting to get a little bit frayed around the edges. He said to me that me was I was I was changing. I was exploring new things. I was expanding my awareness and my consciousness, and he didn't know if he could come with me. right? And my approach, my perspective was, well, of course you can come with me. Let's do this together. Let's do this together. And he said, no, he didn't think he could. And I always remember that because it was a moment of clarity and self-awareness for him to recognize that the direction that I was going in my evolution wasn't a place that he wanted to come with me to explore. He liked the status quo. He liked the way things were. And then many 3 or 4 years later, because it took a while. It took a while for the fraying to become, the blinders completely off. Uh, he said to me, oh, I'm trying to remember it now. He said he wished he could have come with me. Something like that. I'm not remembering it properly now, but in at that point he was angry. Oh, I remember what it was. He said that I wasn't the same woman he had married. That's what it was. And he was saying that in anger. He was upset with me that I wasn't the same woman that he had married. And I said to him, well, but that's a good thing. What, you want me to stay 27 for the rest of my life, or you want me to be 18 for the rest of my life? The whole purpose of the human journey is to grow and evolve and change. However, if a person doesn't like change, that's a little harder for them to do. And so he felt betrayed that I was no longer the same woman that he had married. And I felt free because I was becoming somebody. I was becoming. I don't know. I wasn't becoming anyone in particular, but I was becoming something different than what he wanted me to be.
What an amazing journey this is, I have to say. Thank you so
Mm.
much for saying yes to it, to this extent that it's beautiful, your work. When I went on your website, seeing you on both websites, I have both Megan Edge website, meganedge.ca, and then the Beyond the Garden Gate.ca. It's just
Yeah,
seeing you, I mentioned off record, seeing you in nature, it's just in perfect harmony. Seeing you and flowers and plants just the same. I don't feel any separation. It's incredible how they come together perfectly, humans and nature, because we are not apart from it, isn't it? We talked
that's
earlier about
right.
that.
We are nature. We are natural beings. We are a part of this matrix, for lack of a better word. We're part of this. I don't know. We're just part of this. We ourselves are here. We've evolved here. There may have been evolution elsewhere as well, but we're here. We are infused. We are infused, and for me, I look at it as it's in my DNA. It's in everybody's DNA. All of the things that are around us, that surround us, are part of what we are. And maybe that sounds really sort of, I don't know, highfalutin, but that's the facts. That's the facts. That's the truth of it. And it doesn't matter if you're in a condo downtown and all you have is one little tiny house plant on your desk. You are still connected to nature, right? And when you walk on the concrete, underneath the concrete, there is dirt. You're still connected to it. You cannot get away from it despite your best efforts. And there are a lot of people that try very hard to be completely separate from nature and to see themselves as above it or better than it, or I don't know, but I don't think they're very healthy in that approach, in that belief system. We are here as stewards of this planet because we have the capacity to see and appreciate what's around us in ways that is different than other creatures on the planet. Not better or worse, just different. And we also have the capacity to do an enormous amount of harm to these ecosystems. That's what makes us stewards of the land, stewards of the planet, stewards of one another. So any little thing that we can do to connect with nature, to pick up a little piece of garbage, even to not throw something out that can be recycled, whatever it is, every little action that we take allows us to be stewards of the land, and the land responds to that. Right? And this is not a foreign concept to a lot of cultures on the planet, but it is a very foreign concept to North America. for the most part.
Yes, we have lost connection to ourselves, so that makes sense. Yeah, if we don't know what we are, then it's of course what to expect, right? When it comes to the relationship with our environment in others. So
That's
that's a
right.
reflection of the disconnection within ourselves.
It is, and that then becomes part of the healing journey too, right? I view nature as a healing modality, and I help people see when they walk down the street what's around them. I help them identify the name of something so they can see it and go, "Oh, that's a heather. I'm looking at a heather plant now." Now I have a deeper connection to that heather plant that I walk by every day because I know what it is. And then there's all the medicine in nature. Nature is medicine. It's full of medicine. Where do we get our medicines from? Where does big pharma get its medicines from? It's from nature. Nature can heal us not only by us being out in nature or looking at the little plant on our desk, but the things we need in our bodies to be healthy. We find in nature. We find it in the plants, and we find it in the flowers and the seaweeds and the mosses and the lichens and all of it, the trees. All of it has medicine for us. And we have simply forgotten that that's true. And the knowledge has been purposefully lost, or suppressed to create a reliance on something outside of ourselves for us to be well.
And it's sad to hear, yeah, every time I hear that we have lost touch, with ourselves, and then we are pretty much destroying our own environment and our relationship with others. We have lost the connection to truth, that everything's interconnected. Whatever we say, we do, we affecting one another in everything else. So that's kind of sad to hear. But we
Well,
can deny truth, right? When at that level, it's also truth, per se.
yes, but instead of it being sad, the awareness that that's what is happening can allow us then to choose to do things differently, right? If we want to understand how we've lost our connection to nature, well, that information can be found. We can look at what the church did. We can look at what different cultures did. We can look at what policies have done. We can understand where that disconnect has come from. And then with that understanding, we can heal that disconnect.
Like you said, we can't really try to change or force change in our environment. We can only be that, right, Megan?
We can be the change, absolutely. And then also we can understand that this planet of ours, this planet that we are on, that we are guests on, has been around in linear time, at least as we think, for billions and billions of years. And in all honesty, very few people on the planet can even conceive of what a billion years are, never mind 100 years. But the fact of the matter is that when we study the Earth's history, and I have a geology background, I studied geology in university. I was going to become a geologist. Um, when we look at the time, what's called deep time, we see how many times this planet has experienced almost near destruction from various forces in nature, whether it's meteorites or internal combustion or whatever it is. The rocks tell us the story. There's very little, I believe, that we as a species can do to create lasting harm on this planet. The planet is going to be fine. And I don't say that to let anyone off of their responsibility to be stewards of this planet. By no means. There are many, many things that many of us could be doing better, including our politicians, to make sure that this earth is healthy. But long after we are gone, the earth will still be here, right? She will repair. But wouldn't it be beautiful if while we're here, we were part of that repairing, as opposed to continuing to disregard the impact on certain ecosystems that we are creating now. But she will recover, right? I mean, the thing is to, and this applies to humans as well. It's not that we it's not that we have to make ourselves better, it's that we have to stop making ourselves sick, right? And that's a quote on my website, actually, on one of my pages. I think it's the healing services page. I reference that quote. It's about not continuing to toxify ourselves, our bodies, and then also our environment. And we have the capacity to do that as a species. We can do it. And the sadness that you feel, yes, of course, it's a very natural feeling. My gosh, I look around at my city. I live in Victoria in British Columbia in Canada on the West Coast. This is a very young city. It's only been around for 100 and, I don't know, 50, 60 years. When I think about what this land looked like 200 years ago and what it looks like now, and I think about the valleys and the trees and the rivers and the people who lived here in that environment, I feel a deep, deep sadness. There's a deep grief there. And also there's beauty in what has been created. And there can be a bridging of those two perspectives in order to create the healing. And I think there are a lot of people on the planet right now, especially, who are really focusing in on the healing. And so if we can remind ourselves of that, that in the face of war, in the face of destruction, in the face of the horrible, horrible ways that people treat one another sometimes, there are also beautiful connections and incredible relationships and efforts to to heal, to heal the planet, to heal the environment, to heal each other, to heal ourselves. There are incredible kindnesses that happen every single day on this planet between people and between people and their surroundings that we sometimes forget when we are bombarded with images of things that are not pleasant to look at.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Especially if you watch TV, which is something that I don't for a reason. Yes. I
Yeah.
love that message too, right? That sadness, grief, and joy, they can coexist. It's the movement again, right? Of the colors of life. We cannot just embrace parts of life, but life as a whole. I love that you gave that time, here within this video interview to just talk about nature and honor its presence and its need for our kindness, really. I usually say it that way. I think nature needs our kindness. And so our inner
Mhm.
world, right? The way we treat ourselves with the negativity, with the thinking.
I think it is the height of human arrogance to believe that we can. And we can be pretty arrogant as a species, right? But to believe that we have the capacity to destroy this planet is the height of arrogance.
It's almost there's a shift in my perspective. So thank you,
Mm.
Megan, for that. Right? It's an arrogance to think that we can destroy any of this, and I go back to divinity that cannot be destroyed. Right? So we're almost at the end. I could talk to you forever and ever and ever. I mean, this is like music to my ears, to my heart. I want to mention your book. I think we talked very briefly in the beginning. So the Heart's Journey, Healing Hearts, Oracle Cards and Guidebook, and that can be found on your website. I'll have the link here for the website, and also your services at meganedge.ca. Oh gosh, you have so many services there, intuitive counseling. I had so many questions for you here about the topic too, but I think I love how we just went with the flow. And to me, there's kindness to it too. When it comes to flow,
Mhm.
acceptance, there's something about love. So thank you for being open.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
So, and then you mentioned, so the Beyond the Gate, Beyond the Garden Gate.ca, that's where you have the plant education and medicine, handcrafted products, foraging, urban and wild tours, and you offered a free ebook too there. So I'll have the link here. Classes and workshops. Did I miss anything, Megan, about your services and your website? And I mean, there's so much that you offer, though. It's unbelievable.
There is a lot. There's a lot because there are a lot of ways that we can heal, and I want to have as many of them as I can. I don't have all of them, and there's lots of incredible, amazing healers doing incredible, amazing things that are different than what I do, and that's perfect. That's how it should. That's how it should be. There's a good use of the word should. That's how it should be. Yeah, but how I encompass it is mind, body, and soul healing. The intuitive counseling and the story work is the mind, the things we believe about ourselves and how those can be healed. Um, the body is the physical work that we do at the energetic and emotional levels, as well as the physical levels. So that's the body work that I do, the intuitive energy massage that I've created as a healing modality. And it's about the foods that we eat, and food as medicine, nature as medicine. That's all the body part of the mind, body, soul matrix. And then the soul is, of course, the connection to the divine. And who are we really? And how can we heal at a soul level? Is that even possible? Yes, it is, by the way. We can, and there's lots of beautiful techniques that we can do to connect in with our soul's purpose. And you and I were talking just before we got on the recording about, are we really just humans, or is there more to us? And there's so much more to us. We're in this symbiotic relationship between ourselves and these bodies, these beautiful bodies that take us through our physical lives. And in that is the soul's experience. And the soul is something that isn't contained within the physical body. It has so much, it has a different kind of freedom than the freedom that we get to have in the human body. That's a whole other conversation, but that's the soul piece, is looking at our purpose, why we came here, what we believe happens when we leave here, and the way in which our energy continues into the ether after we die and before we get here. And there's a lot of people right now, especially I feel, that the soul healing piece is the next step in the healing journey. Right. Once you've healed the mind and then you've healed the body, now we can move into, let's look at the soul. Let's see what your soul is grieving, or what your soul has brought into this lifetime that can be uniquely healed in this lifetime. And by the time this airs, well, I have a course, I have a workshop coming up that is looking at past life exploration. And then I have a 9-week course coming up that's an in-person course. So you do have to be in Victoria, but I am going to be putting it online as well, which is the chakra journey, where each week we look at we do work on one of our chakras, of the 11 chakras that I work with. Right. And so by the end of those 9 weeks, you've been on this beautiful chakra healing journey. And with this new awareness of what is in your body and what your body is a part of, and all of that wonderful juicy stuff. So yeah, and that's on the website as well.
That's wonderful to know.
Yeah.
So I'll have the links here. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Megan, for your beautiful presence in this reality, for everything that you
Mm.
shared here. To me, it's sacred, especially when you talk about healing, spirituality, and nature. I mean,
Mm.
what's not to love about all that? And it is sacred. We have lost also um, our connection to sacredness, and that's something that I'm for some reason, very attracted to. Seeing
Mm.
everything as sacred and treating
Beautiful.
everything as such. So,
Absolutely.
thank
Yes.
you.
Well, and I want to thank you for the space that you hold for these conversations. It's such a beautiful thing that you're doing to allow for this container.
Gosh, yeah, I can't
Yeah.
help it. I have to say, it's a choice, less choice. Until it dissolves, like any relationship, right? Then we
Yes.
no longer need it, and it will dissolve itself. But for now, yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you so much
Yeah.
again. Bye for
Beautiful.
now, Megan. We'll talk soon. Take
Bye
good
for
care.
now.